Hello and welcome. My name is Ali Lahi, and I graduated in 2020 from the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm a first-year medical student at the Mayo Clinic Alec School of Medicine. I'm excited to welcome our alumni, parents, current students, and friends to today's virtual event, What's Helping Us Through Spiritual Resources for Navigating a Pandemic. And before I begin, I'd like to explain the format for today's session. You will only hear and see me and today's panelists. Today's program will last about 1 hour, and we encourage you to participate and interact by introducing yourself in the chat box. We also encourage you to ask questions at any time. To do that, please type a question in the question and answer box at any time during the talk. Following the presentation, we will have time to address your questions. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share it on the Alumni Association YouTube channel following the event. I'm particularly interested in today's panel. When I arrived at Washington University in fall of 2016, I found a home in the Muslim Students Association, but I noticed that we didn't have an office on campus specifically to support religious and spiritual life. Not only did we want more support for Muslim students, but for the entire WashU student body, irrespective of their faith or spiritual background. During my sophomore and junior year at Washington University, a few friends and I worked with WashU administrators to advocate for this change. Others, including some of those campus ministers serving WashU, had been suggesting this change for a while. We felt that it was time for WashU to increase support for our students' religious and non-religious identities. We were also interested in more interfaith opportunities for our students. And a few years later, here we are. When I applied to WashU in 2015, I expressed in one of my essays for the Irvin Scholarship that my hope and prayer was to establish an interfaith group and community on our campus. And I'm so grateful that by the time I graduated, Washington University not only has an interfaith student group, but there's also an Office for Religious, Spiritual, and Ethical Life, which I feel is invaluable to the Washington University community. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. The Reverend Callista Isabel served as the first director for Religious, Spiritual, and Ethical Life at Washington University. In this role, Callista supports our diverse religious communities, offers interfaith learning opportunities, and provides pastoral care and spiritual support to our students. Callista earned her Master of Divinity degree from Yale Divinity School and a certificate from the Yale Institute for Sacred Music. Callista is an ordained pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And prior to joining Washington University, Callista served as the college chaplain at Muhlenberg College and associate university chaplain at Yale University. During my senior year at WashU, I had the opportunity to work with Callista as an interfaith programmer and advocate. Through working with her, I witnessed how valuable she is to the Washington University community, especially during the challenging times that we live in. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Callista Isabel, and I'll hand over things to her to welcome our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ali. It's such a joy to see you after many months. It's great to have you as part of this. And welcome everyone. Thanks so much for taking time to be part of the conversation today. It is wonderful to be together in this virtual space to think about spiritual resources for navigating a pandemic. We do invite your questions throughout in the Q&A feature on your screen. And please continue introducing yourself in the chat so we have a sense of who's here and where you are. I want to thank our folks in University Advancement for thinking up this idea and hosting us today. And I am delighted to be joined by 3 panelists today, and I invite those 3 to join me with your cameras on as we get ready to hear from each of you. We have 2 students and then 1 of our campus ministry colleagues. And so thank you all. As we prepare to hear from each of them around this topic, I think it's important in any interfaith space to just remind us all that even as they come from a particular tradition, each of them, we're not expecting them to speak on behalf of all Jews or Muslims or Catholics, for example. And so we just keep that in mind in any interfaith space, that they're speaking from their own experiences. And if you happen to share their tradition, you might have very different experiences or perspectives, and that is okay. So with that, I would like to invite Father Gary. Would you please introduce yourself? Gotta unmute yourself, my friend. There you go.
There you go. Hi, y'all. Nice to meet you. My name is Father Gary Brown, B-R-A-U-N, some say Braun. It's an honor to be with you. Thanks to all the thanks Callista said, I echo from all of us and all my colleagues. I've been on campus by luck and grace. I've been on campus for 30 years. I came in 1991. It was a very different campus religiously in those days, or not, you could almost say. It was really very, very different than where we've come to. I could get into the history of all that later. Suffice it to say, I do have a good sense of, after 30 years, of what's going on. And it's amazing to me how much it has changed, how different, like I just said, it is. The issues the students face now in the pandemic especially, but really it's just almost every 5 or 10 years, it almost seems like there's a radical change and some new challenge, some defining experience going on in the culture around us or in their own hearts. The university has risen to meet them. I gotta say, it's been a great gift to work with the university. They have opened every door they can by statute. Some things they can't support individual religion in any way, but they open doors. They make sure we're there for students who would like help. If somebody's sick and they want a chaplain to visit them in the hospital, they do all that kind of stuff. I'm a priest of the Archdiocese of St. Louis for 44 years, and I turn 70 tomorrow. Is that enough? Calista, anything else you need?
It's perfect. Happy almost 70th birthday. What a fantastic milestone. And we are grateful for all of your many years of service to Washington University. Thank you. Micah, would you like to introduce yourself next, please?
Sure. I'm Micah Sandman. Hello. I'm a sophomore in the School of Arts and Sciences, studying religious studies with minors in religion and politics and Spanish. I'm Jewish. I'm originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but I'm living here in St. Louis for the school year.
Thank you, Micah. Fahim.
Hello, everybody. I'm Fahim Chowdhury. I'm a senior at WashU. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Muslim Students Association right now. I've been involved with them really since like my freshman year when I got onto campus. I'm originally from Denver, Colorado, but currently living in St. Louis. And yeah, I mean, I'll echo Father Gary's statements. A lot has changed in the last 4 years, and I'm excited to talk about it. I don't have nearly as much experience, but excited for the panel.
Thank you all so very much. And just a little additional word about religious, spiritual, and ethical life at WashU as we prepare to begin. In the chat, I've posted our website in case you'd like to explore a little bit more about our diverse religious, spiritual, and ethical communities. So this is a fairly new role. As Ali said, this office was developed about 1.5 years ago to try to support the diverse religious landscape of WashU, whether it be individual students and their needs or our many religious, spiritual, and ethical communities. In addition, we offer interfaith programming. We have a great group of interfaith fellows this semester. We do a lot of different things around holidays. We have an Interfaith Student Alliance, et cetera. And so that's a key pillar of the Office for Religious, Spiritual, and Ethical Life is interfaith engagement, trusting that we have a lot to learn from each other if we can build bridges across traditions. My dog's gonna bark. The joys of working from home when the UPS driver rings the doorbell, forgive me. And then that third area of our work is spiritual care, pastoral care. So really trying to walk with students through whatever they're going through. And certainly during this pandemic time, plenty of spiritual needs. So as we launch into our panel, I'm gonna invite our panelists to consider a question. So the pandemic has affected each of us in really unique ways, in challenging ways. So I'm curious, the three of you, each of you, how has COVID-19 affected your religious and spiritual practices in small or large ways? How has it affected your beliefs, your practices, your gathering with community, et cetera? How have you and your community adapted? And so I invite you to chime in, and maybe we'll go in the opposite order. Fahim, can I ask you, and then Micah, and then Father Gary?
Yeah, of course. So I think really the biggest thing that COVID has changed is like the idea of gathering. And I think this is true for, like in general, interfaith and spiritual connections, that I think having a community behind you and having a group behind you is a large part of like the spiritual setting, or like an easy way to connect with your spiritual side. So I think COVID has made it a little more internally reflective. So you look in and see, how you yourself could improve. And I think, of course, because of like, as Zoom has continued, we've had more and more like these like webinars that have been happening. And at the end of the day, I actually think it's maybe brought people closer in that you realize you don't have to attend in person, that things like the like Zooms and online seminars, online sermons are becoming more and more common. So I know for like in Islam, we have a large Friday prayer that happens, and usually it's mandatory for everyone to attend in person. And so especially right when like lockdown hit, obviously that wasn't happening, but it actually became a lot more like I think there was a lot more community building, in that my friends and I would all watch the same sermon now, because you weren't going in person to watch one person, but everyone could watch the same. Even if like the imam was in Texas or something, we were all watching the same person and we're all learning the same things, even though we were really farther apart. So I think it's something that, even though it may have split us at the end of the day, I think it's opened up these doors that maybe we weren't thinking of before, just because of like out of necessity.
I love what Fahim you just said, and I think also for me, community has been the loss of community, and also the forging of virtual community has been the biggest shift during the pandemic. I think I was last year as a first year student, I was so excited to have so much Jewish student community at my fingertips at this school, because I come from a place without really much Jewish community at all. And I think the loss of that was hard initially, but I think also being able to sort of forge a more maybe individually spiritual relationship during this time, or have that more individual reflection. A key part of the way I connect also to my religious tradition is through music, and the loss of having music in communal settings has been really challenging. But like Fahim said, it's also sort of given new opportunities. So next week, I'm going to be participating through Hillel in a like virtual song leader training, which is exciting, and an opportunity I wouldn't have otherwise had in non-pandemic times. So it's give and take, I'd say.
Thanks, Micah. Father Gary?
I would say, gosh, there's so many good things that have come out of it and so many very troubling things. What breaks my heart the most is the suffering of our students on almost every level. In my 30 years here, I've never seen loneliness like this. The floundering on how to meet new people, especially in freshmen, and not having the occasions to meet people, like going to class together and meeting friends across the aisle in the classroom. So I'm confounded by that in many ways, and we've had some success at meeting that need in them. For myself, I would say one of the greatest gifts of the pandemic was a new relationship with solitude for me. I'm a raging extrovert. I've never had an unspoken thought. I love to hug, and all those things have disappeared. I'm not allowed to have a wife, so I couldn't get that venue taken care of there either. So I had to learn how to embrace solitude, and what's proven to be really fruitful is that so are they. And it's really been a remarkable conversation. I can't tell you the number of one-on-ones I've had, and I suspect the other campus ministers would echo this too, one-on-ones with students, one-on-ones just talking it through. They're very frank about where their suffering is. If they put their best foot forward in the old days, they no longer have a need to hide it, nor probably can they. So it starts deep and goes deeper. And I think a lot of campus ministers are seeing it. We're on campus. We are ourselves on campus. So our doors are still open to students with the legitimate restrictions on that. And worship is happening here we can go do 80 students. And what's really was cool when we were shut down totally last spring, I guess it was how many students were at home, and then over the summer, who watched the Mass, for us, for example, the Mass, who worshiped with us with their parents from home. That was a whole new phenomenon. And we ended up reaching alumni from all over the planet. I mean, we were getting 1,500 people queuing in on the Mass and the homily, especially, they were queuing on all over the country. So alumni were writing back who hadn't had a chance to worship with us since they graduated, now they can. And the bond is phenomenal, and what it's opened up for them in terms of memories and connections to WashU and spiritually for us has been really powerful. I mean, I could go there. It's just been remarkable, but the solitude has been the way we have met, and it's just remarkable to be companions with each other in that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all. I'm reminded that last spring, when we were just adapting quickly to this new pandemic reality, one of Father Gary's colleagues, Troy, posed a question in reflection to all of the campus ministers and to me: what does this time make possible? It was a question that acknowledged the very quickly changing reality around us, but also some of the possibilities that we couldn't yet imagine, including going to all of these virtual services. I love Zooming into friends' church services in New York City and all over the place that I wouldn't do before. That said, there are certainly plenty of challenges, as you all have named, that are still ongoing. So in the midst of this, I'm wondering, holidays have come and gone for each of us in our traditions. Can you each give an example of how you observed a holiday differently this year, whether in a good way or a challenging way? Micah, can we start with you?
Definitely. I would say, well, a lot of the holidays have been pretty different. I would say I spent the high holidays on my own at the beginning of the fall semester, and I would say normally that time of year is really special to me, and to spend it in solitude relatively. I had a couple of friends by my side, but to spend it without family or to spend it without community is really challenging. So I was sort of trying to find ways to observe them and to observe those holidays in which feel meaningful to me. Rosh Hashanah, which is the start of the Jewish New Year, is typically a very joyous, buoyant time, and so I tried to sort of make my home a space which felt reverent and happy in the best way possible, and sort of preparing and trying to sort of make this, bring any sort of semblance of ritual into my apartment, which was new, but actually worked and felt really special, and wound up watching some virtual services with friends and praying in my home. And then for Yom Kippur, which is typically a pretty heavy day of mourning, I went to the butterfly garden actually and just sort of spent some time there. And I think it felt particularly, it felt that, I think Yom Kippur felt very strange because that's also a day where being surrounded by others in sort of collective mourning can feel really overwhelmingly special, but sort of being on my own and having that time to sort of process the pandemic, process the year, and think about moving forward in a beautiful space on campus was really nice as well. So
thanks. Fahim?
Yeah, so I think as soon as the pandemic started, relatively soon, we had Eid al-Fitr and Ramadan come through. And Ramadan is typically a place where a lot of it is about community, you know, at night after everyone breaks their fast, everyone prays together. And so it was a lot different. And I think the transition was maybe a little challenging and a little difficult in that you're not going to the masjid anymore. And, you know, it's when the long prayers, you know, you're not in a community with everyone praying together. But I think at the end of it, when I talk about it with my peers that have come back to campus, it does seem like it was actually like a relatively more special Ramadan, that you got to spend it with family and spend it with the people close to you, and the people that you're spending it close to, you would get to see them all the time now. And instead of, you know, when you go to the masjid, there's a lot of other people, you might drift away from your family and all of that. And instead here, it's like relatively more close knit. And again, it's with that internal reflection that as a family, you can bond a lot closer together. And I think Eid again was also relatively different. You know, usually Eid after a month of fasting, a lot of it is around food and getting to know people. And and now when I think about it, you think of Eid prayer when there's 300 people and you're going around hugging everyone. You think, why was there not a pandemic already? So you think about stuff like that. But you obviously it was a lot different. The Eid prayers, people did it at home. But again, I think it was nice that you got to have a day of reflection afterwards where you think about the month that just passed and you're just with your family instead of, maybe like usually it's a lot more joyous and a lot more people, but you got to think about it from a different perspective. And in terms of the actual celebration of it, because a lot of it does revolve around food, during the day of, I know my family did this and a lot of others, is that people would pre-package food and leave it on like their porch and be like, oh, just call up your friends, like, hey, come pick it up. So then you would go, see them on the porch and you could just grab the food. And it was a lot more like that outdoors instead of everyone getting together in a house, which I thought was a good take on things. And while it's definitely not the same, it's definitely a way to adjust during the pandemic. And then Eid al-Adha was about the same thing with like no big prayers happening. But what we're really looking forward to is now Ramadan is coming up again, April 15th-ish. And now that we're all at school, or a lot of my Muslim peers are at school, we're trying to decide how we would make it the most fruitful for everyone. Having it at school, being socially distanced. And I think having everyone together is going to be a challenge to make sure that people aren't getting too, I think COVID fatigue is also coming in because it's been a full year. But we're trying to make sure that we can make it as fruitful as possible while also making sure that that we are following COVID guidelines. So exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Fahim. And I understand that our colleagues in dining services are gathering up some recipes from some of our Muslim students to kind of do like recipes from home for some of those breakfast meals during Ramadan this spring. Is that right?
Yeah, they're doing a fantastic job, honestly. They're also taking care of like room bookings if we want to have like large meals so everyone can be spaced apart together, and like how to distribute single serves so they're not so there's not crowding happening. So overall, WashU is doing a great job in terms of Ramadan prepping. We're very excited.
That's good. Thank you. Father Gary, do you have any observations about holidays during the pandemic from your perspective?
Well, I think Fahim nailed it when he talked about it's not the joyful gathering it would have been for a lot of those occasions like Christmas and Easter, and the diminishment of the size of the crowd and seeing everybody and the laughter around here when students come together at the beginning of a semester, even right now, would have been just a cacophony of laughter and voices and stuff. And so I asked a student of faith and a student of no faith, I said, what should I be preaching about? Even though you wouldn't come or you're not a believer, what would you say you most need to hear something about? And both of them said how to handle disappointment. I look so forward to certain things happening and then they get canceled and again, and it gets canceled. So we need, I need help, they were saying, to stay positive in the midst of some hard disappointments. I mean, the seniors from last year know it extremely well. The freshmen from this year are still waiting for the college experience they dreamed. So it's just one disappointment after the other, and it's easy to get negative, it's easy to get cynical, it's easy to get crabby. And so that channeled a lot of where we've taken these kinds of things, knowing we're gathering with some level of disappointment all the time, really, and we can make it work. So that really had a lot to do with it. The last thing I would say is we've learned so much from the Jewish community at WashU about Shabbat, and so many Christians, at least, tend to gather like every Sunday into big crowds, and Shabbat is more focused, the rabbi tells me, on in the home. Well, COVID has reduced us, if you will, just like the Jewish community began to find it when the temple went away, got destroyed. They moved it into the home. And we've never learned how to do that, really, as Christians very well. So the Eucharists were in the home. Everything we did on Sunday essentially became around the dining room table while they were watching, or they would sometimes just put on the sermon/homily and talk to each other about it afterwards. So it's kind of an interesting emerging. We'll see where that goes. I might be out of a job on Sunday someday.
Thank you all. Yeah, I hear so many themes of grief and mourning, of what we miss or what opportunities we can't take advantage of right now, and also a longing when we finally are able to gather again in larger groups or be with family for holidays, etc. It will be so much sweeter. So we do look forward to all of that, even in this long time of waiting. So in the midst of all of those challenges, we do have an opportunity, those of us from religious, spiritual, or ethical traditions, to turn to those traditions or teachings and communities for strength and support. And so I'm wondering for each of you, is there, and this question comes from Deborah in New York City. Thank you, Deborah, for adding that in the chat. What lesson, teaching, or belief from your religion has most helped you in this difficult time? And I invite all of you, wherever you're watching from, to think about the same thing. If you happen to have a religious or philosophical tradition, what is helping you through from that tradition? Let's see, anybody want to go first on that one? You can just chime in.
Well, I can go real quickly. I think hope is the biggest gift faith has given me, and the immediacy of the moment. So hope, the fact that hope gives me the possibility of an attitude that can create me instead of deaden me, and create people as well to help them continue, as I said earlier, to emerge. So hope is really huge. And then the other piece would be, what's that old song? If you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with. That if we just focus on the people in front of us and do our best to love them in healthy, life-giving ways, we can come out on the other side of that into hope. So through them to hope. It's a reason to get up in the morning. It's a reason to set the alarm before I go to bed tonight, to know that tomorrow I can love again. There's, no matter how physically distanced we are or how many masks we wear on our face, nobody can stifle the possibility of loving another human being who happens to be 6 feet away from them, right in front of them. And given politically what's going on too, there's ways to engage out there too, to love the institutional picture while it's so troubled as well.
Yeah, thank you. Fahim.
Yeah, I can hop on. I just want to follow up on that. And I was thinking about the one saying when I read it in our chat, which is it's this Arabic verse that says "Inna ma'al usri yusra," which just means verily with hardship comes ease. And I think the reason that I think really resonated with me, especially throughout this quarantine, is I think it really builds together all the ideas of hope and the idea of patience and everything that comes with it. And that, like, when we're going through the hardship, it is difficult to think like, oh wow, I can't see everyone, this is indeed like it's never been before. I'm not with all my friends, I'm not with all my extended family, I'm not with my community. But again, there is that sweetness of it's gonna come soon, and when it does, it would be like greater than it has been before, because you know what it's like to not be with it. And I think that's why I think it covers all the sort of adjectives I'd want to use when describing this pandemic and then the community that comes with it.
Yeah, thank you. Micah, do you want to chime in on this?
Sure. Well, Father Gary alluded to a moment ago, Shabbat, and I think, I think in Judaism, there is the idea of holy separation and of making something distinct, which gives it a quality of holiness. And the idea that I think, like, for me at least, during the pandemic, the weeks and days tend to blend together, and everything becomes the same and a little bit. And so the idea of taking time from the rest of the week to make something holy and to rest has been really, really important and necessary. And I also think it reinforced the idea that we need rest, and that rest is essential to our creation, I suppose, but also just to our survival. And I think there's been something emerging from the pandemic, which has been a collective recognition that that people are suffering, that nobody's doing very well, and sort of just a bit of recognition of others' humanity, and that we need some space and a little bit of slack and rest. So I think Shabbat and the principles of Shabbat have been really special to me.
I so appreciate all of your reflections. And one of the themes that I'm hearing bubble up in different staff meeting conversations and even in conversations with students is grace. And that's a a resource and a gift from my particular tradition, but that it's shared by a lot of religious and spiritual traditions. Like, what in this time does it look like to give yourself grace and give each other grace? Because as Micah just said, this is a struggle for everybody in different ways. And so what does it mean to say, okay, we're tired, or yes, we're a little bit more irritable or worried or scared, etc. The list goes on. And so what does it mean to extend yourself some grace and others in this time? So I just want to add that to the mix, something I'm really thinking about. But I've also been so heartened to hear that word come up in so many different conversations. It almost sort of softens the edges of a business meeting, if you will, when somebody says something like that. We had a question pre-submitted around the challenge of loneliness in this time, where we're often discouraged from gathering, or there are so many barriers to that, or even making friends. And so I'm curious, from each of your perspectives, maybe we can start with Fahim as our senior in residence here, and then Micah and Father Gary. You know, what wisdom do you have to share, observations, especially maybe to first-year students or others who are feeling isolated or lonely during this time? Are there ways that spiritual and religious communities can be resources, etc.?
Absolutely, yeah. I think from a club side of things, for the Muslim Students Association especially, one of our biggest goals was to make sure that the first years were feeling involved in the community and were feeling that they had a place to call home here, especially because it is difficult when everyone's not meeting together and everyone's not getting together for the 5 prayers a day, or at least not for the Friday prayers that are usually a big part of the community. So in that instance, I think some way to get into the community doesn't even necessarily have to be spiritual. So we would hold, game nights every other week. We have a scavenger hunt going on right now across campus, so you can just find the clues as you go. And I think things like that are ways that get you into the community, which can then help you in your spiritual side. And it doesn't necessarily have to be prayer or worship that's all happening together. Certainly that is obviously a big part of it. So to that end, we have been holding the Friday prayers we have 10 people at a time. And so we advise people also to go to different prayers every week, because we have 3 prayers. So if you go to 1, 2, or 3, then hopefully you meet different people. And from there you can expand kind of your interactions with people, increase your connections. And it's a lot different from years before, where you just go to one large prayer with 50 people and then you meet everyone and then you can choose which path you want to go. So certainly I think it takes a little bit more time, and it will take a little bit more energy to get into the community, but it's a worthwhile effort and a worthwhile endeavor. And hopefully people like, all of us, Father Gary, Micah, and even you, Callista here, would be a great resource in getting people into the community. And we're obviously very willing to be part of the outreach. And if you're reaching out to us, we'd be more than happy to give you places to go or people to meet.
Great advice. Thank you. Micah, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I loved what Fahim was just saying. And I think that the idea of making new connections right now is something that can feel really like something we're longing for, but also something that's daunting. I know a lot of us feel like our social skills are atrophying a little bit. But I think making new connections is more important than ever. And there are lots of places within the Jewish community and within Orsal that are offering Office of Religious, Spiritual, and Ethical Life. Sorry to throw around acronyms, but that are, I think, trying to offer that kind of connection within the Jewish community. Both Hillel and Chabad, which tend to be sort of the poles of organized Jewish student life, are offering programming, and that's educational, that's social, that's around. There are, Shabbat meals that you can attend in person, socially distanced, or pick up to go. And there are so many people in those communities which are really eager to meet you, and the staff and directors of both of those organizations are really eager and so willing and friendly and loving and able to connect students. So, and I would say with Orsal, there's been a little program running called Interfaith Buddies, where students have had the opportunity to, on a weekly basis, just sort of have casual conversations about religious, spiritual, ethical ideas, And that has been a great way also for students to come together in a virtual way to just meet each other and talk about important and interesting ideas. So yeah.
Thanks, Micah. Father Gary, do you want to add anything around this loneliness and isolation theme?
The only thing I would add to it that we talk about a lot is how to find God in loneliness. It's a sort of a different take maybe than we just heard. All those things are really, really, really valuable, and we do all those. We have a process called Anam Cara, which means soul friend, and you can find somebody to go for a walk with and talk about life or how you're doing. We have queer communities that ease people's loneliness too. But the first unaddressed need sometimes, because the culture doesn't really teach us how to do this, but how to embrace our loneliness, almost befriend it. Because as we all know, everybody's existentially lonely at some level. Even the most intimate friendship still has loneliness built into it. And so to learn how to embrace loneliness as it comes, because when we bury our dead, when we're grieving, like you said earlier, Callista, it's just true that we will always be dealing with loneliness, even in the same room with somebody we love a lot. And it's definitely with strangers. So our goal is to help people break open the experience of loneliness so that they're less afraid of it and it doesn't feel so deadening. A lot of things are inside of loneliness. Some people experience it as anger, anxiety, sadness. Just to get to know ourselves in our loneliness before we start to try to fix it can really open up a future for us. Because my goal with the students, our goal here with the students is to love them as they are now and help them be happier when they're 50. So I came here when I was 40, so I know what I was wishing for them. And I want them to open up these experiences and not be afraid of them. I guess that makes sense. And that's what we do in this Anam Cara when we're walking and talking. And the last thing I would say is we want them to get exposed to nature. Nature has been so able to ease the loneliness of our students. If they go for a walk in Forest Park, we're so lucky at WashU to have Forest Park right here, or even just around campus, and just look for something beautiful and be ready to be surprised by the tiniest little thing. You would probably believe this. I was gonna say you wouldn't believe this, but you wouldn't believe how much that opens up their spirit. And they come back so different for having seen something beautiful. So nature has been such a huge part of students being healed, if that's the right word, of these things.
Yeah, and on that theme, Father Gary, I've heard folks say we really have to be more intentional right now to get out and go to nature, because especially if we're doing a lot of our work remotely or virtually, we don't have that commuting time. You might not be trekking across campus as many times a day or at all. Folks aren't often leaving their desk chair for hours on end. And I heard this brilliant suggestion over the last week of building in like a digital, a commuting time, like make yourself imagine that you've got a 10-minute commute. So you walk around the block or but it takes intentionality. And when we're tired or worn down, that's extra hard, but it's often what's gonna really help us through maybe a tough day. So thanks for that reminder. Along that line and theme, Eric in the Q&A raised a question around during this pandemic, have any locations or spots in your home, and I might extend that to your neighborhood, your community, surprised you as being encouraging for reflection or prayer? So maybe it is a particular place you like to go for a walk. Maybe it's a nook in your living space. Is there just a physical place that you're finding helpful to maybe it's a prayer room, et cetera, that is helping nourish you right now? And any of you can just chime in with that answer if you have something to share.
We've kept our backyard religious symbol empty so that all students would feel welcome there. And there's 2 rooms in the house too, so people don't have to be confronted all the time with other people's religious symbols. Our chapel, for those who would not have an issue with our symbols, is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Students go in there in the middle of the night. It's not unusual they go in there, I hear somebody crying, and that's a very powerful place. And it's one of the things, Callista, I'm glad this came up because it's really hard to find a place to cry on the South 40, for example. So the undergrads of junior, freshmen, sophomores especially don't have a place to cry. And so the backyard, we've kept those spaces for anybody just come and who needs a good cry. And I really do believe there's something healing in that, and our tears are the waters of baptism in our tradition, and cleansing in the Jewish and all the other traditions as well. So I think there's somebody could cry. We need spaces for that to happen. And I think in the middle of chapel, in the middle of the night, or in the backyard, we have a hammock back there. We got a little waterfall playing through the whole winter. I go back there every morning. It's not too cold. And it's just perfect for me. That's where I look for that beauty to begin my day with.
Well, thank you for offering that space to all students. That's a gift. Micah or Fahim, do you have any thoughts about that? A space that might come to mind?
I can hop in right here. I think nature, as we discussed before, I think has always been great. And so I think actually recently I've been going to the East End more often. And I think that's just because WashU in and of itself is like really beautiful. And of course the campus is like gorgeous. So it's a great place to just walk around and really think by yourself. I really appreciate how they left the middle of it open and it's not full of buildings all the way around. So there is a place to walk and you can enjoy Brookings. There's seating everywhere. And so I know actually for a lot of the members of the MSA, the Muslim Students Association, who came back early, even for RA training or WUSA training, all the stuff that happens before school starts. The East End was actually a really popular place that you would just run into people all the time. People just go there just to eat lunch or dinner by themselves. And I think this is also a great place. I just want to say thank you to WashU again for having so many prayer spaces open. And I know it's a little more difficult over quarantine, but with their prayer rooms on the 40 and Lee basement for all faiths, the chapel's open, the CDI has prayer spaces, and then Lopata in the village. So I just want to say thank you for that. And people are certainly using them. And I know Lopata especially is open on Fridays for the prayer, and it definitely gets its use. So thank you again. Just a moment of gratitude for WashU.
I would say there's a little lawn in front of my apartment building where when it was warm outside, I was having friends to come eat socially distant meals. And I had sort of many a Shabbat meal outside sitting on the lawn with a friend who would walk over. And it just felt great to be able to share Friday night with someone and in a safe way and eat outside. So I think my lawn now has some magic to it. And then I'd actually say my bedroom, which is kind of strange, but I do so much stuff from my room nowadays. It's where I go to school. It's where I do a lot of things. But I've had a Havruta group over quarantine, which is sort of like tech study partners. And I've been doing a weekly Torah study with a few friends, and it sort of gives my room a bit of a different quality. At the end of the day, we often study at night, and that it makes my room feel sometimes less academic and a little more spiritual, which is much appreciated.
Those are all wonderful examples. And I love in the chat, we have a couple of folks sharing your own favorite places. So a sunroom, a prayer chair, it could be even a little thing. I just find my daily walks to be really spiritually grounding for me right now. There's something about just, feet and on the sidewalk over time and just watching. I also heard so many people talk about being more tuned into the changing of the seasons. Especially if they're working from home or studying remotely, just because you're looking out the window maybe a little bit more. I noticed birds in a way that I never would in previous years.
Amen.
In that spirit, we had a question pre-submitted around mindfulness. How might I begin a habit like meditation, and how can I be more mindful? I have some very specific suggestions that I'm happy to offer in a moment, but I'm just curious for each of you or any of you, if you've thought about that, had any experiences of just kind of trying out how to be more intentionally present, some sort of meditation, etc. Does anybody have anything you want to share along those lines?
I could go real quickly. I just drop into that place, that quiet place on the inside through my body, through my senses. Like, what do I see, hear, smell, taste, and touch that brings me? I tend to live in the future a little bit too much. And so to just bring me, what do I see? That, the sky is blue, the clouds are big, it's gray, it's raining, it's cold, all just through all my senses. And then I notice in my body where I'm resisting anything that's usually a little tenser. And then I just stay in that for a little bit. And that opens me to the moment, like I said, and that opens me to the God who is only in the moment, because it's all here or it's not anywhere. So that really, really helps me. And I can't even tell you when I'm grieving how much that helps, because I tend to drop into anxiety in grief instead of into that quiet place. And so to go through, what do I see, hear, smell, taste, and touch? Where's the resistance in my body? And just breathe and breathe deeply. And it just opens up. I can't tell you how much it opens up, but I would say that practice got me through. I was 37 when my mom died, and it was my first experience of that kind of a level of death. So it really, really got me to where I could work with this grief and let it make me better man and better priest.
Thanks for sharing that. Mhm.
I still do
Micah
it.
or Fahim?
That's how I
Oh.
start every prayer time. It's the same way still. It really is something for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
I can step in really quick. So how to begin these habits, I was thinking actually about this the other day. Well, so when we saw this question that was sent, I actually really enjoyed the question. I think part of it was that I do think there needs to be some sort of sense of intentionality that we talked about. But I don't think that intentionality necessarily has to be a sort of chore that, oh, I have to do this, but with the idea that this is like beneficial in some sort of way. And so I think, I was thinking of specifically within Islam, because the prayers are grounded within certain times throughout the day. I think certain times then become reflective of meditation for me. So there's a prayer at sunrise, and then the one at midday, I think is especially useful, where anytime midday hits, it's almost as if, okay, I have to take a moment for myself and have this like sort of meditation. Whereas it started the other way around, like, oh, I have to do meditation because it's midday. It's now like, oh, it's midday, I should do some. And I think that's been helpful for me. And something this is from Ali's older brother, actually. So when I was talking with him when I was first on campus, something he used to really do was he used to park his car like 15 minutes away from his dorm building, actually. And that for him was his sense of meditation. And there's this idea of dhikr called remembrance in Islam. And that was his time to do it. And he actually really enjoyed. I'd always tell him, like, come on, just park your car right next to my dorm. There's an empty spot. And his thing was always, he really liked parking his car 15 minutes away, because that walk to and from his car for him was a sense of meditation. And I know, a lot of people enjoy the driving as well, but even aside from the driving, even walking there, like, again, the steps on the sidewalk and knowing that you have these 15 minutes to yourself, which is not really part of the chore of whatever you need to do when you get to your car, but just to yourself, was something that he really liked and something that I, kept on to. And I think it's a really good idea.
That's great. Micah?
Oh, I think like Fahim said, I think building in those structured times is what's probably most helpful for creating a practice. I will confess that I have tried to be a regular journaler for a long time to no avail yet. So I could probably learn from some of that. But on sort of a less religious or a spiritual note, I have missed sort of music so much. I'm in an a cappella group on campus, and not being able to sing really has been difficult. It's something that is a part of my religious life. It's a part of it's just part of me. And so this semester I signed up for voice lessons so that I knew that at least once a week for an hour a week, I'd have time to go into the music building, which is a space that I miss, and sing and take that time for my own happiness and mental health, and knew that I'd have something to look forward to and that I could rehearse and have that time to sing. So I think creating a time and having some purpose behind it.
Beautiful.
Oh, I love it. It's all about intentionality and finding what's going to be most life-giving. I put a couple of suggestions in the chat. Someone else also said that, Lori said the Calm app is very helpful. It really is. There are a lot of free meditations on calm.com. And it's a wonderful way to just try it out. You can just follow the directions, and it's full of grace if your mind wanders. Gratitude journaling and other gratitude practices are one way to be mindful, even in a tough time, to still take stock of what's helping you through the day, some of the gifts and blessings in each day. It doesn't discount the challenges of this time, but even in the midst of grief and loneliness, etc., it is very uplifting to remember even 3 things that helped you through the day or that went well. I shared that Habif Health and Wellness at WashU post Mindful Monday inspirations on their Instagram page, etc. So just a couple of little very practical suggestions as we go through here. There's a question in the Q&A from Peggy around the Psalms. And so is there a particular Psalm, Father Gary, that comes to mind that might be especially helpful during this time? Don't have to quote the whole thing, but anything that comes to mind just off the top of your head.
For me, any of the Psalms of Lament are the Psalms that came out of exile, because I feel like this is a humanity exile from a lot of things we used to call home. So yeah. We did Jonah a couple Sundays ago, and Jonah was told to stand up and cry out, stand and cry out to Nineveh, well, wherever, I mean, even in his own prayer, and he kept refusing that. And when he finally got to it, it was a different story. But I really think the Lament Psalms and the Psalms that come out of exile have been so, actually, it's ironic to say this, but they've been life-giving, partly because they ease, if I felt a dead end for me and a dead end for a lot of students, but I say it more for myself right now, is self-pity is a dead end emotion. It's dead end spiritually for me. And so when I can connect with 3,000 years of tradition and cry out in lament and exile from a place of exile, oh my gosh, it changes. There's a transformation that happens inside of me. Sorry for my answer.
No, thank you. That's great. Wonderful. I wonder, you know, from your perspectives, Micah and Fahim, if you want to add any last thoughts in the next couple of minutes here about something that's inspiring you. We're just in these early weeks of the semester, but is there something from your religious or spiritual life or practices or tradition that you're finding inspiration from as we're starting out this new semester? How about Micah first? I know you're both trying to wait for the others.
I'll say 2 prayers specifically actually 2 prayers in a practice come to mind. One is Misha Bera, which is the prayer for healing. And it's a part of, you know, a lot of, you know, sort of regular liturgy, but that during a global pandemic feels really important and grounding to say, to think of the sickness that's going around in our world. There's a prayer Modeh Ani, which is something you recite when you wake up and you're still in bed, to just basically be thankful for your body and the life that's running through you. And that's sort of, for me, the inverse of thinking of sickness as being grateful for my health and my existence. And then the third is just sort of a practice of text study, which is, I think, just something that has been providing me a lot of just like fun, frankly, like intellectual fun, to be able to look at a text with friends and talk about it and discuss it and question it. That's like a central part of Judaism and has been giving me something to look forward to during the pandemic.
That's wonderful. Fahim.
Yeah, I completely reflect all the things Micah has said about, I think there are certain prayers with that come into mind during pandemics, and I think the prayer of waking up and like it's the prayer of shukr, of like gratitude, I think is really helpful. But I actually really like what someone just said in the chat. I was about to say that I think in Islam, like a large part of the prayer has to do with coming together in a group, and it's really encouraged to pray in groups together. So you have that sense of community and bonding that forms. And so that's probably the part that I miss the most, but also the part that when you reflect on it is kind of bringing you together the most, that you think everyone is going through the same thing, that everyone that you used to pray together with is also doing the same thing at home now, and is also probably thinking about you when they're praying through the same struggles that you're having. And again, like going back to this, like the Friday prayer that we usually have, I think that's been something that's been really grounding, and that there are people who now you won't see for weeks at a time because you're not going to class, maybe some because you're not going into class, you don't run into them on campus, or you don't see them while you're grabbing lunch. And so having one central space where everyone comes together at least once a week, every couple of weeks you'll run into them there, and it's a good reminder of like maybe even like what's great is yet to come, and that after this pandemic, hopefully we'll all be together again.
Oh, that's excellent. Any last words, Father Gary?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about what I'm learning about faith in this time. I've been able to take courses that I've never had the time for. I'm studying Midrash now. I studied Aramaic back last spring, and I feel like everything that matters to me is closer because of this time. And it's been good to study the scriptures.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise, I am so inspired by what I'm able to learn from students even in this time. Just gathering last night with our Interfaith Fellows for the first session of the semester was so inspiring, especially the curiosity that each of them bring to learn from each other and support each other in this time. And this is just completely voluntary that they committed to this. It's not for credit or anything, but so I'm very much inspired by our students, as I know all of you are, whether you're an alum, a parent, a grandparent, a current student inspiring other students. Thank you all for taking the time today to be with us, and a special thanks to our university advancement colleagues. I'm going to turn this over to Suzanne for some closing comments. Thank you all panelists.
You're welcome.
My name is Suzanne Wagstaff. I'm the Director of Alumni Networks and Regional Programs. And on behalf of University Advancement and the Alumni Association, I want to thank today's panelists. Thank you to Father Gary. Have a great birthday tomorrow. Thank you to Micah and Fahim. And I also want to thank Ali for the welcome and introduction. And I want to give a special thank you to Reverend Callista Isabel. She helped us put together this event, and if it wasn't for her, this would not have happened. I also want to thank our audience for joining us today. We are recording this event, and it will be posted on the Washington University Alumni Association YouTube channel, along with a lot of other great events if you haven't visited that link. You'll receive a link to the recording and the survey, which will be in your email box in the next few days. And there's also Callista's email and more information if you want to get in touch with her. Please visit the link in the chat box, and at that link, you can see the listing of all of our upcoming events. Please email us at the Alumni Association if you have suggestions for future speakers or topics. And we hope to see you soon at an upcoming event. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.